Okay. So I have our meeting recording. For those who are just coming in, we are going to have everyone muted for the first part. At the end, we will have a chance for questions. So you can write them in the chat or write them down and then say them out loud. But I thought we would get started with a prayer. So let me pull that up for you. This is a prayer for archivists of congregations of women religious. Lord, let us remember that the trailblazers of yesterday are our traditions today. Boxed and labeled and cataloged, they leap from our shelves, our forebears who fashioned new stories to tell. Their spirit escapes in new patterns, new plans, our website of findings that links and expands to whatever the future is waiting to give. Lord, let your spirit spur us to tell the pulse of our work in our quest for the best. Amen. So, we are hosting this event today. We have been asked many times to hold a sort of virtual event where we could tour the archives. And we've never done it because we were always a little leery of the technology that it would involve. But we're going to try it today and see how it goes. So sort of our agenda is going to be, Lisa and I will introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about the archives and the kind of work that we do. We'll take a short walking tour around our space here in Cleveland. And then at the end, we'll have some questions and hopefully you'll have questions that we can answer. And if anything occurs to you afterwards, you feel free, you can always email us, get in touch with us, call us on the phone. We love to hear from you. And we really hope that you learned something today. And we're grateful that you came to join us for American Archives Month in the month of October. So I'm just going to introduce myself really quickly. I'm Sarah Lubelski, and I've worked for the congregation for almost 6 years now. Before working here, I was an archivist in the state of Illinois. I worked at a public library and answered a lot of genealogy questions and questions about schools and hospitals in the area, sort of local interest questions. So a lot of things that, we answer questions about here in our office as well. And I really love being able to share the stories of the sisters as we learned them. There's so many stories, thousands of stories in our archives, and we're so grateful that we have the chance to learn the stories and share them with other people. So it's really a privilege to work here. So I'm going to give it over to Lisa now, and she's going to introduce herself and talk a little bit about our particular archives and the work that we do.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I'm going to how do I make myself big? On the whole screen. Well, I think you all have your choice to make myself big or not, correct? Put it in the speaker view and then I become large. I'm going to do that so I look at myself. I am so glad to see you all here today. When I put it in speaker view, though, I have Sarah, so I'm not really sure what's going on here. I'm hoping
Lisa,
Sarah...
on my end, I've pinned you. So
okay.
If you right click on your screen, you should be able to pin yourself. But I believe for our recording, you'll be front and center.
All right. Okay, great. So everybody, if you don't see me large and you want to, because you want to see the archives behind me, pin me by going up to that little dot, dot, dot of your own picture square. Everybody, anyone need help with that? Okay, so hey, I'm Lisa Gibbon. I'm the director of the archives. You just met Sarah. She's the assistant director. And we run your archives. We enjoy it. We run the archives for the entire congregation. A little bit about me. Both Sarah and I are professionally trained archivists. We have our master's in library science. I got my degree many decades ago from the University of Michigan. And after 2 years there at the University Archives, I immediately started working for Catholic Congregational Archives. I worked for the Redemptorists first, both in Chicago and in Denver as their director. From there, I went to Maryknoll. I was the director of the archives there. And then I then took a hiatus to raise my son, who's 22 now. And had the good fortune to be hired by Sister Marguerite and Sister Joni Cryenbuhl in 2015. And Marguerite's right at the top of my screen. So I will never forget that day when I came in for my interview here in Cleveland in the parlor. And I smelled the smell of the convent, and I just knew I was home. I just knew I was home. It was a mix of coffee and dining room and wood polish, and I just knew and just all of the people. I knew it was home. It was a perfect fit for me. So that's me. That's me, and I've been here since 2015. So the history of your archives are that your archives have always existed from the beginning of time, beginning of your time. When the congregation was created in 2007, discussions started about the future of the archives. When I was hired in 2015, it had already been decided that all of the archives from the founding congregations would eventually come under one roof. And it had been decided that that roof was Cleveland. And when I came in, there were already, because of neighboring and new, there were construction projects happening in places like Wichita, and moving had to be done right away. So I jumped right in, started moving things, but we were moving things before we had a home for them here in Cleveland. So we ended up putting things in storage. We had to move them out of buildings that were being torn down, but we didn't have a building to move them into. So in December 2019, this facility here opened, our new archives. Unfortunately, right after that, COVID happened and it shut everything down. We were so excited to finally be an open archives, have people come visit, do research, do a lot of outreach, but COVID happened and it really set us back. Last summer, the final archives, the last key in this whole chain of things was Wheeling that had to be moved. We moved the Wheeling archives here. So now I can honestly say all of the congregation's archives, all 7 of them, plus 8 would be the new archives starting from 2007 on for the Congregation of St. Joseph. So we have 8 archives plus special collections under one roof. This is not a small archives. When you talk to fellow sisters from other congregations and maybe talk about archives, theirs will be maybe a 5th or a 7th of the size of ours. This is a large archives for a congregation of women religious. We're entering a new phase. We're really excited to be able to share it with you. Again, we don't know what we're doing with this visual tour today. I just hope my internet connection with you is stable enough that I'm not breaking up. And this is just, we've been wanting to do this to share this with you forever. Where I am standing now is the stacks. So this room, we inherited a room to build in. It was the worship space, the modern worship space that had been built in about 1990 in Cleveland for the sisters. It is shaped like an octagon. We were not sure what to do. We knew that we needed to have compact mobile shelving, as you can see here. About 1/3 of all space in all offices is wasted by aisles when you're storing things. So we knew that we needed to fit everybody into one space and still have room to expand. So we ended up having designed and built for us a room shaped like a half octagon inside this octagon, and has turned out quite lovely. Sarah will show you around the gallery space that goes around the edge of it in a minute after I show you more of the archives part in here, and you'll see how well it's turned out. We have now today, and you can brag about it to everybody, we have a state-of-the-art system. It is not necessarily a gold standard, although it kind of is, but it is just kind of a standard to have a Liebert system that maintains the temperature and humidity control within 2 degrees every single day of the year, 24 hours a day. We have that. And it may sound extravagant, but when I went in and first got here, we have the very first ledgers because people were making ink out of anything they could find. You would make ink and you'd record what you were required to record in the mid-1800s for the diocese, for your for whomever you reported back to, your mother house, and the ink is almost faded on some of these. And as I pointed out to the CLT at the time, I can stop this from getting any worse, but I cannot retrieve it. I can't make it come back. So having a state-of-the-art system with the temperature humidity controlled is absolutely critical for maintaining the archive. So we're very, very fortunate. One thing more, I don't want to bore you to death, but I did want to point out about archives versus historians versus librarians. And for many of you, you already know this, you can just, earmuffs, but for the rest of you who are interested in hearing, just to be clear, Sarah and I are not historians. We don't have PhDs in history. We will never write books about history. We're your curators of your history. Hopefully some of you are historians. I know Barbara Hughes is out there. Anybody else who wants to become involved in writing about history and researching it is welcome to do so. We will not. We will always collect it and preserve it and make it available. So we preserve the items that are unique. There's only one copy of Barb Kupchak's nursing diary from 1932. I just made that up, but it is not a published book. So we're not librarians. We don't lose copies of things and get more copies of them because there's a million copies printed out there. We have unique items that we're preserving. We don't go through and decide what pages to rip out because she said she doesn't like Mary Alice's meatballs. We're not doing that either. So we're not here to filter the history either. The good, the bad, the everything, it's all here. And it's up for us to preserve it and make sure that we can organize it in a way using computers, using inventories, using our stacks so that we can find it to share with you. So that's what that is all about. So again, we will never be historians. And it is just a fact that I will mix up probably your foundresses at some point. I will get a name wrong. I referred to Bishop Rosati in St. Louis, who was the bishop at the time that the sisters came to Carondelet. I recently referred to him during a meeting as Bishop Rogati. Now that is me. I am going to just make mistakes. I am fallible. Okay, so and the reason we have such a great archives, let me not forget to say that, is because of all of the women that came before us. So we may be your first professional archivist, but all of the women who have worked as archivists before us, all of the sister archivists, have done so much work. And we wouldn't even have anything to archive if they hadn't collected it. That's the most important thing of all. So I wanted to show you a little bit about the insides. I'm on a rolling cart that's on top of cobblestones. So so these are our compact mobile shelves. Everybody, here's an example. Can you see LaGrange? So LaGrange, for anybody who was at LaGrange, you can remember how large your archives was. It now fits on 3 rows. That's how much space we've saved. We crank out, and I invite you to come and play with these. We have pneumatic handles. You hand crank them. Anybody can do it. It doesn't take very much oomph. And when you're doing it, you're probably moving about 700 pounds. I'll give you an idea of how deep. It's working out pretty well. This is wheeling. This is everything we brought back from wheeling. So it goes back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ranges times 7. That's 8 times 7, 56, 560 linear feet in one range right there. That's an incredible amount. And I measure that by 1 foot. I can get 3 1-foot boxes across. And that's how we measure that. So we just moved in wheeling. We still have capacity to take in something else that would be small. And as we go through things, which is so very important, as we go through things, we find that everybody saved the LCWR minutes from 1982. Everybody. So we can go through and remove duplicates and decide what we need to keep and what we don't. When the boxes look like this, and these are Nazareth member files, when the boxes look like this means they're done. This means that Lisa and Sarah have been through them. organize them, finalize them. The only thing that these ones are missing is that we have a new label now that goes on top that shows the Congregation of St. Joseph Archives logo. It's attractive. I'll see if I can find one. Another thing that we added in here is we have a wall of art. Every piece of art we get, we try to store in here, and we switch it out on the walls as often as we can. We have art by the sisters, art for the sisters. And Sarah will show you how she's rotated some of those things out. I think I've told you almost everything I want to tell you. Oh, I did want to tell you, how long have I talked? About 10 minutes. All right, I'm almost done. The other thing I wanted to tell you is what you're going to find in these stacks. What you will find is more of the dull things, administrative, chapter proceedings, assembly materials, CLT meeting minutes, every single committee and task force that has meeting minutes. We also have lots of personal papers. So a great example is Sister Jackie Weatherholt just sent us a box of awards and some paperwork that goes along with them, as well as some materials about her education. So those are considered special collections. We keep those in a section that is just by the sister's name. Those collections can expand to include writings, poetry. Let's see, one of the sisters came across a bunch of letters recently. She'd written home as a novice. That's great. That tells us all about life as a novice. Things that maybe retreat journals that were written right before you took on, say, maybe a new ministry like Tutors on Wheels. Journals, photos. We have architectural drawings. As you can see, we have a lot of art too. Sarah's going to show you that we also have a lot of furniture. Why do we do all this? Is this just a luxury item? Should we get rid of this department? I'm telling you, no, this is very, very important. The sisters were just absolute pioneers. And this is one of my education pieces I like to talk to you about. Sisters were pioneers in so many different areas. And I think, maybe when we're actually involved in doing it, it's hard to see how important our own work is. But I assure you, your work is important. Breaking glass ceilings, dealing with sexism in hospital administration, creating education for the poor and the needy that perhaps maybe other people didn't think merited it, and you went ahead and did it anyway. I think about standing up for civil rights. I was just talking to Barb Kopchak about how the sisters refused to give in when the sisters or some nurses went on strike at St. Francis Hospital years ago, striking because there were Black nurses, and the sisters said, no, we're not letting those Black nurses go. They're staying, and they deserve to be here. So it's a history not only of women religious, but it's a history of women and your capabilities, and just like Mary McLuhan's book says, everything of which a woman is capable. And that's what we have here. The sisters were doing before such things as like maybe Earth Day was invented, right? The sisters were involved in working for the environment long before it ever became like a popular social movement. I see the grassroots with the sisters. When people from the outside call me to talk about Sister Helen Prejean, I always say, you're right, she is a superstar for us, but you have to remember, she learned from the people that came before her, the people that were going into Angola State Prison around 1920s. That was already happening, and she learned from them. So the sisters, your roots in all of these peace and justice movements, health, education, it's incredible. It's incredible, and people are studying it from silly things. Dissertation student working on what in theater, his PhD in theater, wanted to know, do his dissertation on fabric used for habits. Be my guest. I'll help you, but be my guest. It's not really top of my list, but so we do those kinds of things. Those are our outside researchers. And the other thing that we do, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah, is that we're a service unit. So we don't sit here and hope nobody calls us. We wait We wait for you to call us. And any requests we get from sisters or from CSJ administration always go to the top of the list. Everything else can fall behind. To give you an idea, I wrote down my stats here somewhere. So up till today, this year, in this calendar year, we've had 181 requests, not counting the other 3 that I just answered this morning. So 181. And so that's almost a request every other day. Some of those take about 10 minutes to answer, but some of them take 3 days. And they can be very long, and they can be for the CLT. They could be Ed Satoris working on land research. They could be Melissa from development working on relationship with the donor. It could be Barb working on a parish history that's going to have a jubilee. Anything in between, anything and everything in between. Some of the questions I've gotten recently too from Pam Owens have been about how to, what materials she can share with the new residents, lay residents there, to help them see, copies of the generous promises, things like that, for them to help them understand. So we do it all. I think I've given you a nice sense of the inner workings of what we do here inside, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. I don't see any questions in the chat box yet, but make sure you type them in. Make sure you type them in.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'm gonna pull double duty here. I'm gonna change the video that's being pinned on our screen right now, and then I'm gonna run out and start giving you kind of a walking tour of our space. So give me just 1 second here to get that set up, and I will see you in a moment.
While she's doing that, I will tell you that behind her is a cart of St. Francis Hospital that I've been working on. This is what we look like all the time. And we try to keep our mess in our office and not in the rest of the space. We can have our office as messy as we want. The boxes behind her, I can tell you I will never buy those boxes again. You can see how poorly they shipped. Those are all the administrative records from Sister Laura May's adoption, St. Joseph Adoption Service that I closed in Kansas City with her earlier this summer, and they are waiting for me to put them on the shelves. We didn't keep the adoption records, but themselves, because that's not what we do. Those are just the administrative, the board meeting minutes and such, but gives you an idea of the breadth of what we do. Underneath that are some textiles that Sarah is working on restoring so that we can hang them up. And against that far wall, we always have framed items that come to us. We selectively keep items in frames. If they are just an award that happens to be in a frame, we usually remove the award, the paper part, put it in your file, and recycle the frame. I'm still waiting for Sarah. All right, I'm going to turn around. I'm walking.
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to stop. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? There seems to be a tremendous amount of echo in this room, so I hope that you can hear me okay and see my video. So this is the entryway to our archives. As Lisa said, this was the former worship space for the sisters here in Cleveland. Over at this door, you would go over to St. Joseph Hall, and over through this door, you would go to the old Mother House, which has now been turned over to the Academy. So that's kind of just to give you an idea of where we are in our building. I'm going to start actually here with this display, which says "Coming Soon, Sisters in Social Service." And I debated about showing this to you because it's kind of like been this way forever, this coming soon. And that's because making displays is a lot of work. They take a tremendous amount of research. The first step is kind of deciding what you want to represent. The second step is looking at all of the things that you could represent, and then you really have to make decisions about how you're going to represent it. And social service is something that's really kind of difficult because we're not, going into hunger centers or orphanages and taking a ton of photographs, or maybe we don't even keep a diary at the end of the day because we're exhausted. So there's sometimes it's a matter of not having enough to show. Other times there's so many things to represent, it's hard to narrow it down and decide what you're going to show. And when we're talking about social services, we're also talking about vulnerable populations. So how do we want to represent people who are, poor or immigrants or children? So a lot of times these things sort of have to germinate, and we have to really think about them and learn as much as we can before we kind of tackle how we're going to represent them for everyone. So I just wanted to share that with you. We're not inviting you into our house today because the job is done and we're showing off. We're inviting you in today because it's ongoing and it's always changing. And we do our best to represent as much as we can in the best way possible. Some of the other displays we have here, we kind of touch on sort of old-time convent life and religious life in general, a little bit of prayer and spirituality as well. In this display case, we have all the nun dolls, and then we have some items about making your own habits. We have the pattern for the gimp and the liner and punch for the different holes that you would punch in the gimp fabric, and sewing boxes. And we have a little bit about nun dolls. So what I actually learned about nun dolls was that they were sort of like a pattern for, you have sisters going off on ships to the New World, and you want them all to wear a habit, but you don't necessarily are able to write it all down for them. Maybe the women don't read so well. And also, who can follow written instructions that are that detailed? So you would maybe make a little doll for them to take with them. And over the years, it kind of changed, now they're sort of collector's items. But I just thought that was really interesting that they started out as a very practical thing to show women how to dress like a sister and how to, follow the rule of everyday life. Down here, we have we have a picture of Sister Teresa Fitzmaurice, who is credited with bringing the sisters from Cleveland out from like the inner city where it was grungy and dirty and gross to this beautiful property on Rocky River Drive. And so we also have some photographs of the original property, some of the buildings, old photographs or photographs of what the grounds looked like. And then this is our display on prayer and spirituality. We have the different crucifixes and profession crosses from different communities. And we also talk about sort of what spirituality looks like today for sisters and how they bring that to people through their spirituality centers, through their writings, and also what it used to look like with monthly intentions and making altar breads and that sort of thing. All right, so now we move into our sort of proper archive space. So these are the doors that lead us in. And one of the first displays we have is about the French foundings and lace making in Le Puy. So every semester we host the freshman theology classes over next door at the Academy. And we always talk about the very beginnings of the sisters in France and why they made lace and how it supported themselves in their ministry, but also how it was something that they could teach other women so that those women could go out and support themselves as well. And that's kind of a really good place to start with the young women at the Academy, because they can sort of understand, like, we do work for ourselves, but we also do work for everyone else. So this is going to give you kind of a better idea of the space that we have here. It was a big, huge, wide open space, if you remember from visiting Cleveland back before we took over this. Okay, and also our lights go off automatically, so let's turn those on. There we go. We have lots of furniture here. One of the things that we've tried to do to represent all of our areas of presence and founding communities and congregations is to have a piece of furniture that sort of tells the story or represents their convent or where they came to reside. We have these beautiful tables from Nazareth where we do our research and all our projects on. And recently, one of the things that we've done is started refurbishing some of these pieces that we've gotten. So this one is one of my favorites. It's just like a very sweet little desk that has this extra cabinet with more little drawers. This was covered in contact paper, and so we've been working with a carpenter who comes in and sort of evaluates all of the furniture, and we show him, like, this one's wobbly here, this one has a drawer that sticks, this one's missing a piece. And he goes back and he does some work on it, and then we get these beautiful pieces back. So a lot of this furniture is over 100 years old and has probably never been touched in any way to sort of bring it back to its original beauty. So that's one of the projects that we've taken on to kind of preserve legacy and history. So as we go around here, we have barrister bookcases that came from Wichita, and we have these wonderful sliding glass bookcases where we have books about CSJ history, and a little further down we have our different founding congregations and the histories that have been written by those groups. And we also have topical displays. There's one down here about healthcare, and then we have some on education. I'm going to peek through here. This is where Lisa is. I'm going to see her in a minute. There she is. Hi, Lisa. So we're just going to walk through here briefly to kind of give you an idea of how big this is. So here we have Wichita's collections and Maydai's. And here's where Lisa was before with our member files. And this is, oh, Wheeling, we don't have your labels up yet, but this is you, Wheeling. And LaGrange and Nazareth. And Tipton and Cleveland, and then flat files and different special collections areas. Here we go through here. Okay, so because we built this room within a room that Lisa was describing, we have wonderful gallery space, which is such a privilege. So this gives us so many opportunities to tell stories from your archives. So along this wall, we've done a display for all of the different areas of presence that the sisters have been in, starting with Carondelet and the log cabin, and moving on, Wheeling, the different places represented by Borg in the South, and Cincinnati and Minnesota. And on this side, facing it, we have education. I'm trying to go slow, but I hope I'm hitting the mark here. And this is a beautiful piece that was gifted to us by one of the hospitals in Wichita that tells all about the Wichita's history and the sisters' history. And Mrs. McCabe, who founded the Sacred Heart Home for Working Girls that the sisters in Cincinnati took over. And Mother Stanislaus Leary from LaGrange. And this is from Crookston, and we end with Japan. So like I said, we like to do these topical displays. So over here we have one that is devoted to the service of the sisters in Africa. And facing that, we have all of your master's theses and doctoral dissertations. Not all of them, actually. We still have, I think, 2 communities to unpack, but it is such a visual testimony to the importance of education and how much education you collectively have as sisters. It's just really incredible to see them all together. So a little bit about myself. I really enjoy sewing and crochet, and I took a bob and lace class during our COVID time over Zoom, which was a disaster. So I wanted to make a display that kind of honors those traditions of handicrafts, because as lace makers in the very beginning days, we know that sewing can kind of be seen as a luxury now, but for women, it was really a way of life, and it was really something that supported them. So these are different quilts that honor ministry in different ways. We have this pink quilt down here with the hearts is one that Sister Pat McHale makes for our sisters when they turn 90 years old or when they move to Regina. We have this one from Sister Lorena that has her original apron that she wore in her postulant days, and it still has her little name tag on it, which I just love. And over here, we have some different forms of handicrafts. So we do have, again, the lace making and quilting and crochet and different crafts. And this goes really well into our Peace and Justice hallway, which I think is really one of the strengths of our collection. So we have banners that the sisters made that they carried in protests. And it is always especially exciting when we find a picture of the banner in action. So this is one that was used during the missioning ceremony when sisters went to protest the use of nuclear testing in the Nevada desert. And we have them at the missioning ceremony and in their detention pen and then the banner itself. So really great to be able to tell a whole story like that. this is all of the books that our CSJs have authored. And they're all cataloged. We do library cataloging for them. We're working on getting the rest of everything else cataloged, but we started here because this is really important to know what the sisters have written and been published about. And actually one of them is the book that I learned phonics from back in elementary school. Here we have a display on ministry in Latin and South America. And some flat files. And this brings us back to the beginning. And in here is where Lisa is. So that is our walking tour. Are you muted? Okay, I'm gonna mute me. Do you want to come join me in our office and we can take some questions? Okay. Hello again. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Hit us. Okay. Okay. And can you hear me? Okay, good. So we do have a couple of questions here. Let's see, we can't see Sarah's office anymore. Okay. Okay, Cindy asks, as we prepare to send material to archives, what should go into our personal box versus a special topic ministry we may have been involved in? Trying to organize materials is getting a little overwhelming. Yes, that's an excellent question. And the best answer is we don't need you to do very much. We have received boxes where people do this on their desk, which is me going like this and shoved everything into a box, and that's fine. That is our job as archivists to figure that out. That said, it can be helpful when we sort of get indicators from you, like this is from my ministry, and more sort of like how you were involved in it.
If we could know at a box level, like what in general you're sending us and what it's about, that's great. We don't need you to refolder things. We don't need you to organize what's in the folders. We'll compare it against what we have here. If it's a bunch of duplicate newspaper clippings or printed materials, but the most important thing is to get it here. And we don't want any obstacles to stand in the way of the materials coming here. So we don't ever want you to think this is too messy, I can't send it to them. We'll even, if you want us to come and visit you, I'm going to do that in Wichita in a few weeks from now. I'm going to go help a sister there. I will come and box it up and ship it back for you if it's that overwhelming. I have no problem doing that. And we also reimburse you for shipping.
It's much more important to us that we get the materials than it is for you to overwork it and make too many decisions. I mean, we really want to be the ones that help you do that. Because also we have the benefit of knowing what we already have in our collection.
Yeah.
So good question. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and
okay.
Jackie?
A question and a comment. First of all, I sent a question to Lisa about a sister from way back, and she sent me more than enough information that I needed to speak with her family about. I was so grateful for that.
Oh, good. Okay.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This is kind of a silly little question, I think, but you know, our sisters at Nazareth used to sew gowns for the Infant of Prague statue. Lots and lots of them. I wonder if you came across any pattern for that when you were looking or receiving stuff.
That is very specific, and we can put it on our list of things to look for. I remember the Infant of Prague statue. I remember discussing changing the outfits with the people that were helping us down there, but I don't recall seeing any patterns. But that's pretty specific. We'd have to research that.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you. Someone has asked me if
And it
any of
could-
the sisters do that anymore, and I said, I don't think so, but someone did say, if you have a pattern, I might be able to.
Okay,
It could also be that it landed with a certain sister's items, like a specific sister that always sewed the dress for the Infant of Prague. And so if you can give us an idea of who that might have been, we can always look in her particular items to see if we have anything there to find.
Okay.
Okay, our next question is, let's see, Cindy, how do you keep media such as photographs, films, and videos?
good.
That's a very good question. It kind of depends. And this kind of also goes with a different question that I see a little bit later on, which is what kind of photos are important or useful? The best photos are the ones that are identified. Who is in the photo, when it was taken, where it was taken, as much information as you can give. But you don't need to like
Write a book on the back.
right. I mean, it doesn't always merit that. So what we know about photography is it was a luxury, you know. You had to pay, you had to sit for a photographer at the beginning. Later on, everyone had a camera, and in the 90s certainly, and with digital photography, we take thousands of pictures probably every day. You know, in a week we could probably create 100 pictures.
So certainly older photos are more valuable than newer photos,
Right.
because they're a dime a dozen, the newer ones.
And even older, a photograph that's old that kind of pictures the same thing, like a blurry old photograph is much more valuable to me than 100 photographs of the same event that was taken
Today,
yesterday.
right.
How we keep them, we have files for sisters, and we have files for ministries and buildings and grounds. So we sort of group them by the community they originated from.
All
And-
community photographs are kept, all archives are kept intact. So Nazareth Archives came here, it's all kept together as Nazareth Archives. So their photos aren't mixed with each other, for example. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. And then we kind of go down the hierarchy, like what's the most broad term? Nazareth.
Mhm.
What's the next general term? Buildings and grounds, events, people. And then we kind of go narrow it down from there. They're kept in folders. And as far as other formats, VHS, videos, those kinds of things.
Ongoing conservation issue.
Yeah.
They need to be converted.
Identified,
Mhm.
assessed for
yes,
how,
yep. Playable,
yeah.
the quality, sound condition. Mary Lou Pleitner recently had an old wire recording converted to a digital format so that we could hear the voice of the foundress. Now that is just that's just remarkable.
Mhm.
It's absolutely remarkable. And even more fun was that everybody spoke just like they do in the movies from the 1930s.
They all had very
they
tinny
had a
voices.
and it was just like so much fun to listen to. And again, that's the fun things that we get that we need to figure out how to share them with you through more postings.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Another question, if a sister has items from her work on the reservation, can she leave them to the archives after she passes on?
absolutely.
And so what's the best way for people to, for sisters to communicate that?
Have a note in your file with your CCL, your coordinator of community life. I think that files generally have a disposition of goods form where you say who you want to have what. And if you indicate on there that you want any of your materials to come to the archives on there, they do. And it's a really wonderful way for them to get here. And those are extremely valuable to us, that particular work right there. The Truth and Healing Project for the Native American work on the reservations is really important. We in our particular congregation did not run or staff, any of those boarding schools that we've been hearing so much about, which is wonderful. However, the sisters have done, and it should be promoted, just like with any other population, they did a ton of work with Native Americans on the reservations in a joyous, loving manner.
Marianne Wiley?
Yep.
Okay. I have 2 DVDs from a film that was shot in 1968. Oh, I'm sorry, it was 1962. Would this be something you would want? Particularly if it has sisters, or depicts religious life in any way, yes, we would want that. Now, I will say that if you have like your own personal home videos, or what's a better example? Like a parade, like the city parade from 1962. The
It
St.
might belong
Patrick's Day
with-
Parade.
Right.
We aren't necessarily the ones to preserve the history of the 1962 St. Patrick's Day Parade. So we will work with other professionals that we know to find the appropriate place for it.
Oh, can I just say something about that?
Sure.
The DVD, it was filmed as a vocation
Ah,
film, so it shows
Beautiful.
us as postulants becoming novices and
mhm.
then becoming, you know, it shows that whole thing with all the old habits and
Oh,
everything.
fun.
So
So our dream is to get all of those, convert them, and
Okay.
have them available on a website connected to the archives
Oh.
where that's internal, just the sisters could just watch them for fun. Wouldn't that be great fun?
Oh, we'd love it because
Oh,
we're
yeah,
still
me
alive.
too.
We're still
Me
here.
too. We tried
Okay.
converting one by ourselves, and the quality, we tried doing a VHS by ourselves and it didn't really work. So we really do have to outsource it. I don't think it's something that we know how to do, but
Sure.
yes, we do want to work on that. And I think it would be great fun for us all to have the ability to watch them.
Yeah, because it was done professionally in those days, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then someone made a DVD of that. So
right.
that's what I
Okay.
have.
All
Okay,
right.
I'll send it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Ellen writes, you haven't mentioned Baton Rouge or New Orleans area. Do you have archives for these areas also?
Indeed.
We do. So Baton Rouge and New Orleans were folded into the Made-I congregation in the 1970s. They became one congregation with Crookston and Cincinnati. So they are all under the Made-I umbrella, but we do have collections from those areas as well.
And we have a lot. The St. Joe's Academy in Baton Rouge also has an archives. And when I was in Baton Rouge last spring, I went and met with, her name is Sarah also, without an H. I went and met with Sarah there and saw what they had in their archives. And it looks like we have some wonderful ways in which we could collaborate. But the records from New Orleans and Bay St. Louis, that whole area down there are rich and old. They're wonderful.
So that does it for the questions that were in the chat. Oh, did you have something?
No, I was just
Okay.
going to say, if anybody wanted to say anything,
Yeah.
have any comments, it doesn't have to be a question. You know, it could even be like, you've bored me to tears, goodbye. you
Yeah,
know,
your walking tour was a
you're-
disaster.
yeah, just, yeah, step off my stuff. Learn a oral history program. If you haven't been interviewed by us, you will be. We are really persistent in tracking people down to get their oral histories. I know there's a room of LaGrange listeners there at St. Joseph House. I think I've or Joseph House. I think I've interviewed all of you, and so we're just going to keep on trucking away. Oh, and let me say that before we close up, because we've been talking for a while. We're almost done here with our time, but let me say that about oral histories. Why are we doing them? None of you sit around at night, and I correct me if I'm wrong, and write poetry about how great we are. And perhaps or make journal entries about, like, today I was fabulous. I am so great, and here's what I did. Okay, that just doesn't happen. Instead, you're off, like, getting ready to do the minutes for your next ministry, typing up some board minutes. Marguerite's making some table runners, and I mean, you're off doing the next thing. And we just don't have everything on paper anymore. People are not recording things on paper. So documenting what it means to be a sister of St. Joseph in the 21st century is not easy. So archivists are kind of taking this new tactic. Instead of sitting back and waiting for it to come to us, we're being more proactive, especially with women religious. So us, as well as our colleagues at other congregations, are going out and taking oral histories. Tell me what it means to you to be a sister of St. Joseph. And so that's why we're pursuing you all with this oral history, because we're getting great anecdotes from your ministries over the years. We get great communications about where your vocation came from, what your formative years were all about, maybe what your family life was like, what brought you to the convent. And then from there, you know, what you think about everything that's going on today in the world. And that's really valuable to us.
We did have one more question, and I think
Okay.
it's a great note to end on. If we have requests for specific information, should we just email you?
Absolutely.
Yes, call us on our office phone. We'd love to talk to you.
Yep. We've got handouts to help you pack things up to come to us. However we can assist, We're a service unit. We're here for you.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up.
Yeah. Does anybody want to say anything or?
Well, thank you for this wonderful presentation, because I haven't been able to get over to Cleveland. I'm very grateful.
We welcome everybody here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
So-
you so much.
You're
very
welcome,
welcome.
Joellen.
Wonderful.
Right.
Thank
it
you. And
was.
it is really important to me that we represent all
We do
of
this.
the congregations equally. We do our best.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Thank
It
you.
was.
Missed you all.
Yes. Thank you
miss
so
you
much
too.
for your time.
Thank you.
Bye,
all.
everybody. Thanks for
Time,
coming.
man.
Happy
Yes.
Archives Month.
Marguerite.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You were a
Bye.
good find, Lisa.
Good job.
Thank you.
I just want to say, well, it's Rita, are you there?
Yes, we
Yep.
are. How are you?
Fine. Hundreds of Zooms I have seen. This was the most clear, outstanding production, and you were worried about it. It was the best
Thank you,
I've ever-
sister.
ever.
Thank you so much.
You should go into business.
You're our
Thanks,
biggest
Rita.
fan.
Yes.
It was great. It really was.
Thank you for
Bye,
joining us.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.